Okay, we're gonna take attendance. Who is here? And you can deliver your homework in the right. You'll be graded, and it counts for around 20% of your final grade. If you missed 2 sets of homework, you fail the entire course. Good to see so many people. Hi. Today we are going to do how to craft items 101 with Professor Zizaran. We have a bunch of slides and everything is ready. This is going to be it's going to hope that you've seen the last one where I covered at least like the basic currencies and what they did. We're going to be going a little bit more in depth here. So going to be going from like not like super beginner, you just installed PoE, but like, you know, you've played like at least like 20 hours or something, probably 15, probably helps a lot. And there will be like quite a bit of things that like, you know, moderate to advanced players might pick up and not know about crafting as well, because a lot of people don't learn that till very late. But we're gonna go into it here. How to craft items 101 with Professor Me. Hello. So, crafting in Path of Exile is, you know, we have loads of currency, and that currency is also what we use to trade and buy and sell items with, right? You use them to add, remove, modify, or change the modifiers on items. Some people use them exclusively to craft, for example, solo self-found players. And for a lot of people, they don't want to get into crafting at all. They just want to buy and sell items, get an idea from either friends or build guides what kind of item is good. We'll be covering that in the next class especially. But, you know, it depends a little bit on what you're going to be doing. Now, do remember that in the user interface section, like we showed in the last lesson, there is a advanced mod description, and that allows players a lot more information. It's pretty much mandatory. And there is, like, it's such a deep game, right? It's a very, very advanced game. So we kind of need to do things like this because it's hard to learn Path of Exile without a little bit of help. So we are like, there's websites like Path of Exile, there's PoE and we'll be using both of those throughout this course. Right. So we're going to be covering things like talking a little bit about how to roll items, how we use different currency for rolling items. Some exceptions won't be covered because we're trying to be very specific with what we're covering. But yeah, and also we're going to be talking about the crafting bench, reminding people you can roll strong boxes, for example. And we're going to be talking about essences and fossils. So, there's like different affix types. Path of Exile, again, items have 6 affixes. These are the stats of an item. So a rare item can have 3 prefixes, 3 suffixes, right? And you have, on a blue item, it would be 1 prefix, 1 suffix. So prefixes are, you know, on equipment, it'll generally be life, armor, evasion, energy shield. And then on weapons, it would be like level of gems. You would have fizz damage, spell damage. These are some rule of thumbs. Suffixes, pretty much every slot can get resistances. Even weapons can get resistances. And then you have like stats, you have life regen, and there is also increased item rarity. This is both a prefix and a suffix, but the official pathofexile.com/trade will show you whether the item you're buying has it as a prefix or suffix. Other websites like PoE Trade does not, and you'd have to have the seller link you the item so that you can hold Alt, and then it'll show you whether it's a prefix or suffix when you have the advanced tooltip thing on. Attack speed, cast speed, crit chance, and accuracy are also some other suffixes. Path of Exile also has implicits, and I have some examples ready for that in game. Implicits, like, they don't change when you're crafting the item. They don't change if you enchant the item, which we're about to talk about and show. And we have some examples like Iron Ring, Leather Belt, Driftwood Wand, Rings, all have implicit. So here you can see that the implicit for the Leather Belt is 40 life. So if I throw an Alchemy, the 40 life is not changing, right? I would have to use the Blessed Orb that we talked about and showed in the last episode to change the implicit. The only way to change that implicit would be to use a Vol Orb, which also has a chance to break your item. And there are, so like here the implicit is life. On an Iron Ring is physical to attacks. 2 stone, it would be fire and lightning resistance. On a Goat Horn, it's spell damage, and a short bow doesn't have one. So we could try, for example, using a Vol Orb. It gave a white socket, which is a 1 in 4 chance. And here, with volleying it, it would have, like, if this was an alked item with rare stats, the stats wouldn't have changed. This only changed the implicit. So this is a 14% chance to gain Unholy Might. And when you hold Alt, then it actually shows you what Unholy Might does. The best way to figure out what different implicits you can get on what different item is the Wikipedia page. So you can just search, I'll show you real quick, PoE Vol Orb. And remember that it is a 25% chance that it'll re-roll your item. But this is a good example of like websites and third-party things are very, very important for Path of Exile. And you can just click here on Ring, or like we just used the wand here. And it shows you also what item level, which we covered in the last episode, is required. So if we hold on Alt here, we can see that item level 13. So if there was a corruption requiring item level 80, we wouldn't have been able to get that on this item. Let's see. And then that leads us into our next thing, which is enchants. Enchants is something you get from the lab, and you can also get it from fossils, which we'll cover later. But once you do the normal, cruel, merciless, or uber lab, there's 4, you can get different enchants. Starts off with gloves, then you can do boots next, and in Merc Lab and Uber Lab, you can still do gloves and boots, but Merc Lab and onwards, you can do helmet. So here, for example, is a boot enchant. This actually does not overwrite the implicit slot anymore. So if you had, for example, a high-end boot type called two-tone boots that have resistances as their implicit, I believe I have some ready to show you here. You can see that this is both the implicit and the enchant. So don't be worried about like overwriting that with an enchant. And then if I evolve these now, there's a chance that it changes the implicit. It didn't. It ruined my perfectly good boots, and they're no longer usable, right? So Vol Orbs are very risky. That's a point I want to make sure you guys understand. Let's see. But very, very important. No more shoes. F in chat. I'm trying to speak slower today. Let's see. So, there are different like affixes by item type. Like you can't normally roll life on a weapon. Like if you're rolling an axe, you can't roll like 100 life on that. So armor and shields have mostly defensive modifiers. Shields and quivers can roll some offensive modifiers. Boots can roll modifiers that affect movement speed, which is pretty mandatory for actually playing the game and the game feeling good. You'll you'll notice if you're using, we'll use Comb's Roots as an example. It's a unique boot that just has a bunch of life but no movement speed. Unless your character is exclusively moving with a movement ability, no movement speed can feel pretty bad. On weapons, you can see that it's mostly offensive modifiers. You can also roll resist on all weapons. But like I said, you can't roll like life or armor increases or anything like that. So yeah, attack modifiers, and then you have wands, scepters, and staves can generally focus on cast modifiers. Problem with like scepters is that you can roll both. You can get both caster and attack modifiers. So it can be very, very difficult to roll what you want. Maybe you get like 2 or 3 caster modifiers and an additional attack modifier after. Jewelry is obviously a mix between the two. You have a combination of of offensive and defensive modifiers. Same with amulets. Belts, mostly defensive. You can crafting bench on a lot of things can like be exceptions to this, but the main focus, especially early on, is going to be to craft defensive stuff on your rings and amulets, and then later on, you can do more offensive. And currency items in Path of Exile, they affect everything in very different ways, right? We brushed over and covered like the basics of like what every currency does in the last episode. We're going to talk today a little bit more about what to expect and how to craft with them. So these are the ones that modify quality. And again, if you use this on an item when they're white, you'll get 5% quality. That includes maps. So you always want to chisel a map before using a transmute or an alchemy on it. And you always want to say you're about to craft a axe. You're level 42 and you've just found a axe that is also required level 42. You would want to use the blacksmith whetstones before using, for example, an alchemy on that. If the item is rare, then you would have to use 20. So these are all the currencies that do affect modifiers. Last time we didn't really cover annulments and exalted orbs, and we're going to go more in depth and also what to expect and when to craft with both now. So we'll start off with the transmute and talk about transmutes, alts, augments, and then regals, because that is a very, very it's a proper way of crafting and very, very popular. It used to be more popular. The problem with this method is that alterations are, especially in Soul Self-Found, a pain to get. The way you would like normally get this would be, well, what I would do, I would normally pick up a full set of rares, like just as many rares as I could when killing the boss. And then I would vendor those. So identified rares sell for vendors, sell for alterations. So in Trade League, the price is anywhere, depending on the league, from 5 to 10 alterations per Chaos Orb. So it does get expensive pretty quickly. And I'm also going to show some examples from PoE here. PoE is a third-party website, and let's see. We'll bring up a weapon. So we'll use a one-handed axis. So let's say that we were crafting a one-handed axe, and we're going to be using alterations for this, right? We'll talk about different types of crafting later. I just want to cover this now. Then we look at, let's say we want to craft either a mid-game or an end-game axe. Then we look at, well, the most important things for us right now would be, well, we're playing a physical damage build, so let's look at the physical modifiers. Here we have Merciless being like the endgame stat, item level 83, Tyrannical, item level 73, and Cruel, item level 60, right? So we want at least one of these three. That's pretty much what we like definitely need. So if it's like fairly early game, I might hold off until I can at least get item level 73. So that, you know, I have a good chance of hitting the Cruel roll here, but I also have a chance of at least hitting Tyrannical. Even though, and like, I don't want to go like super in depth into waiting, like waiting. But it's like, it depends. It's basically 50, 25, anything less than 100 means it's very rare. It's the TLDR. But the way a physical item would work is you want a percentage phys roll and a flat physical roll because they multiply each other. You want high base phys damage and high percentage phys damage. Now, for a physical damage like this, and I have an example ready to show you guys, we also have hybrid. And hybrid is a half stat. So you can see that it has some accuracy and some physical damage, and it doesn't actually block the other rolls. So I'll just show you the example here real quick. And this is going to be using an example in the crafting bench. We are about to cover the crafting bench more in depth soon now, but the crafting bench is a really good thing in Path of Exile crafting that lets you put modifiers in exchange for currency on items. So here, if you see this Fate Spawn Wall Hatchet, I do have a hybrid modifier. I have Reaver tier 6, which is physical damage and accuracy. So a lot of new players will often ask me how I have 2 physical rolls or how I have 2 life rolls on an item. So if you see here, you can see that even though I have a physical roll, I can already put another one. So they actually stack, which is really, really good. That's exceptionally good for multi-mod, which we'll cover later. And there's another hybrid roll on, for example, life. So here you see we have the same concept, armor and life, and this goes with life. So I know a lot of new players will maybe see something with like 20, 30 life or maybe 30, 40 physical damage and go like, ah. But you do actually want to hold alt on that item just in case that you have a, let's say that this had maybe 50% fist damage, 300 accuracy, and flat physical, and then an open prefix to where you could craft the higher, and that would be an insanely good leveling item and very, very easy to overlook. So I just want to make sure that you guys check for hybrid rolls because they're very, very easily some of the strongest items you're going to get for a low investment early. So with that in mind, once we've like looked at PoE DB a little bit and looked at the different modifiers that we want, so a physical item, you ideally want high physical damage, high flat fizz, and for most builds, attack speed. And then we would roll alterations on the item. Here you can see when I used to transmute, it got lightning rest, which we know is a suffix. And since what I'm looking for is prefixes, I will pretty much always augment every single suffix so that it forces a prefix, because there's always one prefix, one suffix. And the reason for that is I don't really care that much about the suffixes. The number one thing I care about is getting a decent physical roll. So let's say that I was leveling, right? It's a little bit low, but if this was like 100, maybe 80, you don't always have Regal in the campaign. It actually depends a little bit on the league mechanic. But let's say the Heist especially was shitting out Regals, so you do have a large amount. But let's say that this was a Lorax, you have 1 Regal, then something you can do here, like this would be a usable item with crafting flat fist, which we'll cover more in the crafting bench session. But that's a little bit about rolling with alts. Alterations are primarily used when there's 1 or 2 stats that you really, really want. And they really shine if it's 1 prefix, 1 suffix that you really want, and that you can maybe use the crafting bench for one of the other ones. That's definitely when it is the best. And if you are good with some good habits for getting a lot of alterations would be to pick up every jewelry you find, breach rings, everything like that, because you can just vendor everything. And they will stack up pretty quickly. Let's see. Right. We can now explain the 2 orbs that we didn't explain last time at all as well. Orb of Annulment. This is a fairly rare orb to drop. Sometimes the league mechanic will pop them out easier. Heist being a good example of, I had quite a lot of Heist in Solo Self-Found. Quite a lot of Annulments in Solo Self-Found. It is a more advanced orb. And I don't plan on covering catalysts right now, but do remember that this will remove ring quality if you do use the more advanced catalysts. So it says that in the gray text there. It's actually worth reading that gray text here with, let's see, my epic pen closed. Let's open that back up. There. Let's see. You can see here that that text is worth pretty much always reading on every currency if you haven't. The way this works is that it will remove 1 stat at random. It can also remove stats from the crafting bench. It is not worth, like, not really a discussion I want to get into very much on exactly the math of why, but it is mathematically never worth to block a mod before using an Orb of Annulment. There are some insane people that would be like, oh, I really want to get rid of the mana. I'm going to block it with life and then use an annulment. That's never worth it, ever. But anyway, so that's what it does. It removes a mod at random. The reason you would want to do this is, which we can give more examples of in the crafting bench section, but maybe you'll have an item with 5 good stats or 4 good stats and 2 bad ones, and you want to free up a slot so that you can use the crafting bench. Is an example of the Orb of Annulment being good. Exalted Orbs, they're the opposite of an Annulment Orb. They add a stat back on. So I could just... Maybe I have an item with 4 good stats, and I'm not able to like use the crafting bench to add 2. So I would then use an Exalted Orb. I didn't get what I wanted. They are definitely a more advanced and expensive thing, and there are other good uses for Exalted Orbs, which we'll cover soon. Let's see. Then we can talk a little bit about like different ways of crafting. So obviously you can craft just with scours and alchemies. Depends a little bit on how much you have, and if you're soul self-found stuff, it can be hard to sustain soul self-found alchemies. And for all these orbs as well, here is a really, really good thing coming up, because see that I only have 3 scours, I have a bunch of alchemies. Well, what if I'm soul self-found? Well, thankfully, the vendors and different acts do sell you currency. Like, there are default currency conversion rates. So you can see here that for 4 orbs of chance, I can buy a scouring. And you can like look through and see that there are multiple orbs. Some that are very, very often overlooked. Like, a lot of people will run around without quality on their flasks. Actually, don't want it on this one, but that doesn't matter. And you can buy glassboro baubles for 8 blacksmith whetstones. But let's go back to Lani, and I'm going to Control-Shift-Click, and that'll buy a full stack. Do remember that Control-Shift-Click, I always will buy a full stack now, which is a really good quality of life feature to save your wrist, especially when buying like a lot of fusings. That not a lot of people know. So obviously jewelers who normally convert to fusings. But so you can craft with just scour alching. That is fairly viable. You never really want to chaos spam. There's like a lot of people will either save their chaos for trading. You can chaos spam in solo self-found, but most people would save it for your Zana map bench, which we're not covering here, but there are some like potent uses for that to make more currency and gain more experience for your character. Let's see. I want to like I want to blow some minds since we're talking about how to craft. And that is a cheaper way, and a couple of vendor recipes. A cheaper way to scour outcraft. You can actually get free scours. So if you do have, like me, I have very few scours. I have a shit ton of alchemies. This can happen quite a lot. And this is a magical recipe that I really want to make sure you guys see. So the recipe is a red, a green, and a blue gem, which I can buy for 1 wisdom scroll each. That's very, very easy for me to get a lot of. And then you see like this jade amulet gets turned into an onyx amulet when I vendor it with these 3 gems. Now, what this recipe does is it basically turns any amulet into a white onyx amulet. And there's a lot of ways to use this. So now I can alch this. I didn't get what I wanted. I will now vendor it with these 3, and I get a free scouring. Now, this might seem a little bit tedious, but it can be really, really good if you have a shit ton of alchemies, a shit ton of essences. And I think it's very easy on day 1 to have a really bad amulet, and this is a good way to get an okay one. It does not change the item level. It does not lose the influence. So there are a lot of like tricks that you can do with this. We haven't covered influence items yet. But there's another neat trick as well. And we are actually covering influence items a little bit later in this lesson. but and this will make more sense then. But sometimes you might find a special rare iron ring with influence on it, which we're covering later. And you can change that into a sapphire, a topaz, or a ruby. Another good example, we did cover Vol Orbs a little bit, and this is a useful thing where Vol Orbs are actually decent. Because if you do find, like, let's say that this iron ring had like 60 life and a resist, right? But you're missing out quite a lot compared to other rings, and that's when you could vol it and hope that the implicit changes to elemental resistance, for example. Because it might not be worth using over another ring without a good implicit, but, you know, throwing a crafting bench mod on it and then voling it can actually be quite nice. That are some, like, low risk scenarios that you could use. That was like quite smooth that I actually hit it in the presentation. That's nice. Thanks, Chris. Again, Chaos Orb spamming, not really what I want to do. Let's see. And Exalted and stuff, very, very rare. We are now about to... Is that on the next slide or this one? No, we're actually going to start talking about influence mods here. Because with Exalted Orb, there are also different Exalted Orbs that add influence. So what are these special items in Path of Exile, and how do they work? This is a little bit more advanced. They're only something once you get into maps, and they start... You need to do... currently, you need to do the corner maps, and the influence will start looking like this. It starts with the red one, and in these maps, you will start dropping items with special backgrounds. There are six different types, I believe. You have Shaper, you have Elder, you have Crusader, Warlord, Redeemer, and Hunter. Those are the 6 influence types, and they all like have different backgrounds. I usually have a folder where I have like a fairly good idea of like things I might need on Solo Self-Found. On Solo Self-Found, you definitely end up keeping a lot more. We are actually going to be covering the more complicated Awakener Orb too. So we are like covering some advanced subjects here, but those are the 6 influence bases. There are a few other things such as incursion and synthesis mods and fractured mods, but we're not covering that right now. But anyway, here are some quick examples. We have the Shaper thing. And if you look up top, I hate this epic pen thing. I feel like a teacher where, did you ever have your teachers like overhead stop working and they were like slamming it? I feel like that right now. Technology. So if you look up here, you can see that there's a sign. It has like influence on it, and that signifies that it's Shaper. You can also tell by the background. Let's see, and over here you can see that it's Crusader. So they all have like different marks that you can see in the actual name. Most people probably do just recognize them by the background. So here you have like Elder with the tentacles, Hunter with like the green ooze, Crusader with like the crackling, exciting lightning, Redeemer with the kind of dull, chilled effect, and Warlord. Warlord and Crusader can be hard for some people to tell apart, I guess. Maybe not. But Warlord with like the glow. Let's see. And all of these mods are on PoE DB. We're about to go into those and show those as well. But I actually have some cool examples that I'm going to show you. Let's see. So here on Permanent Hardcore League, I do have some of these orbs that are more rare. These are, a lot of the time you are going to be better off selling these. But I want to make a quick example so that this is going to be more for like veteran players that are excited about crafting, but they're maybe like, they don't really want to get into it yet. But let's say it's not going to be like a specific thing we're going for here. We're just going to like show how it works in practice. So actually this won't even work. This is too low item level. It actually needs to be item level 68 or higher. I just realized. Let's see. Let's see if I can just find a body armor. Do I actually have a body armor? I just realized there's an item level requirement on influenced items. I need to find something I can slam. I can't even buy high enough, can I? I wonder if I have one in a remove only tab. Wait.
For freedom.
Because there are item level requirements. Okay, this is gonna lag. I was hoping I didn't have to do this. Because I can't do it on this. This is the one I had ready for Awakening Orb. Okay. Everything froze. Okay, this will be an okay example. This will be an okay example. So, here we have an item level 83 Battle Lamellar. Oh my god, it's lagging. There. And we'll throw quality on it first. And there's a couple ways. You could just like throw it on. But we're gonna let's say we've rolled a like decent chest. There's a couple of ways to use these orbs. Sometimes there might be a prefix that I want to hit. So we'll go here. We'll open body armors. It was strength dex. And we'll look on PoE DB. We can show Path of Exile in a sec too. But say that I want to hit like these 4, right? It's not a great chance that I'll hit them, but maybe I really want to hit +1 level of socketed support gems. Something I could do now, because what the Redeemer Orb is going to do, I can't exalt life with this. I can't exalt hybrid life or percentage energy shield with this. Yeah, I'll put it more on the left. Keep forgetting that I'm on the bottom right now. Like, I can't exalt any of those things, but I can exalt one of the special modifiers. So let's say that I had no strength on this. Then if I wanted a prefix, what I could have done with the crafting bench, I could have forced another suffix on there. I could have crafted fire resistance. And then this, boom, doesn't have a chance of hitting any suffix. It forces a prefix. Now, that was exactly what I wanted. I'm really happy. I got the mod that I wanted. And the important thing to know here now is that the armor has now changed and has influence on it. These are very rare, and you shouldn't use them lightly, but they're very fun when you get them. But this is now a Redeemer item level 83 chest, which is exactly what I wanted. And this brings us into the more advanced crafting thing, and which is Awaken Orbs. And they're very, very fun. So I'm excited that I get to show you guys that. And this is the other mod I really wanted. This is the perfect chest. I wanted fist damage from hits taken as cold damage, and I wanted spell crit. And do note now that these 2 items, if you hold Alt, they only have one that says Redeemer, and this one only has one that says the Shaper. Because the special thing here is that the Awakener Orb guarantees both mods. So if this one had spell crit and another Shaper mod, it would mess things up, right? Because then it would have a chance to take either. But since there's only one influence mod on both, it's actually now going to guarantee it. So what an Awaken Orb does is it takes 2 influence items, smashes them together, and it combines the influence basically, and it guarantees these 2 mods. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to first click the Awaken Orb, then the Sadist Garb, then I'm going to click my Battle Lamellar. And what's going to happen now, it's going to destroy the Sadist Garb, shove it inside my Battle Lamellar, so it's still going to be 6 linked, it's still going to be the same item level. It's actually going to take all the stats from the Battle Lamellar, so it's still going to be item level 83, even though this is item level 85. And it's going to, I will lose the strength, the life, the cold resist, and lightning. That's all going to be rerolled. But it'll keep the roll, fist damage from hits as lightning, and it's going to, fist damage from hits taken as cold damage, and it's going to guarantee the spell crit. And then everything else is random. We can't see shit? What do you mean? Yes, you can. What? I'm seeing on the screen. I mean, if you can't see the Lamellar, that's not super important. You can see the text. Right, so we're clicking the Sadist Garb first, then this. Boom. Now you see we actually got an insanely lucky result here. I'm sure there's loads of things where this could be useful. Beautiful, beautiful chest. And you have an open prefix and an open suffix. But here is an example. So you can see now the background. You have both Shaper and Redeemer on this. It has like nice blue hue and Shaper background. I just wanted to like show you guys a little bit more of advanced crafting, so you have something to look forward to when you do get a little bit into Path of Exile. And I know there's a lot of like veteran players and stuff that aren't like really brave enough to get into crafting and stuff like that. And for influence mods, there's so many fun things that you can get. Before we move on to the next slide, I do want to brush on Craft of Exile a little bit. Actually, I'll do that. I'll do that with fossils. Fossils is the best part to bring Craft of Exile in. And do remember that you can't do... it has to be different influences, and you can't use it on a non-influenced item. So it does have to have influence. I can't do this now, right? It won't let me do something that has double influence. I can't make like triple and then quad and then 5. And like, so here we look at the mods we got 2 shaper mods now. So the intelligence of shaping, that was just lucky, that just rolled randomly. And then we got a life roll, and it could have been another redeemer roll too. Let's see, wrong slide there. So on this next slide, we've already covered the basics of these. We have currency affecting sockets, which is the jewelers, the fusings, and the chrome. Then we have special currencies like Orb of Binding, Ancient Orb, and the Awakened Orb that we just covered. The Ancient Orb we're going to talk a little bit about too, not too in depth, but a little bit. And then we have essences and fossils, which we're going to go into. So for the jeweler and fusing orb, the main important thing is to remember that you want as much quality as possible. In separate videos, I talk very more in depth about the betrayal system, and we'll talk more about fossils now, which is another way to get more quality on your items. No, I'd have to reload. But either way, if you get and we'll be talking about more quality from the crafting bench, but the max possible quality you can get on a rare item is 48, and that will increase your chances of both socketing it and linking it by a large amount. The max quality you can get on a unique, for most intents and purposes, is 28. Getting 30 on a unique is a bit of a pain and not really realistic. So we're not going to talk about that right now. Colors, again, I already explained that the colors and chroming things is based on the stats of the item. So since this is 79 strength and 79 dex, it has a very, very low chance of getting blue sockets. Now, something a lot of people struggle with very often, which we can show here on this, is getting, for example, multiple blue sockets. Let's see. I'm going to bring up something called the Varici calculator. See. So if we look at these boots, they have 95 strength, right? They have 4 sockets and 95 strength. So if we look at this now, we put in 4 sockets, 95 strength. What do we want? Well, I actually want 3 blue and 1 green. Oof. That's expensive. Average cost is 1,122 chromes. 3 off color. Okay, well, what if I only want, what if I can make it work with 3 blue, 1 red? Okay, right. Well, what if I told you there's actually a way cheaper way to do this, and that's what we're going to show you now. So here we have the Infinite Pursuit, the gloves that we just checked, and I'll show you a good way to get off colors very, very easily. So first, I 4-socket them. And we haven't covered the crafting bunch much. That's coming up soon, and a little bit now, I guess. But we're talking about chromes, and I think it's important. This is going to blow your mind. Can't see? Wait, is there something wrong? You guys can't see? Here's the boots. You can see? Good. We can see? Okay, sweet. So anyway, it's 4-socketed, and the reason that I'm doing this is, let's say we are going for the 3 blue and 1 green, which proved to be very expensive. Well, there is a chance that I click 2 blue here, and I get exactly what I wanted. Well, I didn't, but I did get the 2 blue and the 1 green. So if I wanted this to be like definitely 3 blue and 1 red, what I could do now would be to do 2-socket, 3-socket. But let's go for the more rare one. So the idea here is that I will now do 3 sockets followed by 4 sockets. And now there is a 10% chance that it is going to be an off color every time it remakes that red socket. So a lot of people end up having very, very few chromes, but you end up having very, very many jewelers, sometimes thousands. So a lot of people will do this for even chests. Because if you've ever needed a 5 or 6 socket chest with like a lot of off colors, this can surprisingly be worth it. Very, very popular on Death's Oath builds and stuff like that. But basically the way it works is that you do this, which is still fairly expensive on 4 sockets, but very, very cheap when you only need 3 off colors. And then every time you do this, we've already seen we've had a green, but here in like 60 jewelers, we now have what would have cost me over like 1,200. And then we could just 4-link them and be on our way. So this is a really, really great way to cheaply get off colors. Obviously, this is going away in PoE 2, but PoE 2 is also a very, very long way away. So especially good. It's like, it means that it's exceptionally easy to get a 3 red shield. Actually, yeah, here's a perfect example. So this shield here, right? It has a skin on it. That doesn't really matter. Here, let me just get rid of that. There, you can see I have a titanium spirit shield. It's 159 int. And instead of wasting 125 chromes, I can very, very, very quickly just use like not many. I definitely don't want to waste 125 chromes on this. So it's basically you're just going between 2-socket and 3-socket. And a little bit more details on this. So it keeps the first 2 sockets like they are always like linear in order. And whenever I use like this recipe, it's always going to do them like if I click 2 green now, the guaranteed ones are always going to be the 2 first ones. It's never going to guarantee the last one is green. Same with the chest, right? It would guarantee these 2 as a green and these would be rolled normally. I do remember, obviously don't break a 6-link to do this. But this is a lot cheaper than normal. And you could still get unlucky, but the it'll end up saving you a large amount of currency. It's a bit annoying to click. I'll give it that. But it'll largely save you a huge amount of currency in the long run. So you'll see every racer will do this pretty much. And we don't really need to actually do it because we've already done it on the boots. But let's move on. So the ancient orb in Path of Exile. There, I have some ready. The way it works is that it will, let's see, let's put it over here so you guys can see it better. Actually, we can put it in its folder, and reforges a unique item as another of the same item class. So that means that if I actually here's a, I don't really want to break my old school 6-link. You know what? Let's log in on my champion. I have a lot of examples on that one too. Do I have ancient orbs here though? No, I do in the flashback. No, I don't. All right, we're going back. But either way, it changes the unique item. So you can make a unique chain belt into a unique leather belt, or you can make a unique simple robe into a unique occultist vestment. But there are some like, so for example, there is a very, very expensive item in Path of Exile called a Headhunter, right? This is worth 50 to 100 exalts depending on the league. And if I'm standing in my hideout now, I can't make it. I can't, like, this can never turn into a Headhunter. The reason for that is because it's a special league. It's an old league, so to have a chance for this to turn into a Headhunter, I would need to be in a map that I've, through the map device, used Nemesis on. But we're not going to talk too much in depth in that. However, do remember that it will break 6 links as well. So you can't use a Ancient Orb on a Tabula to get different 6 links. I can take this like Ventur's Gamble gold ring here, and also for this, item level does matter. So if I do a 1,000 robes, simple 1,000 robes, item level 1 unique, has a fairly decent chance to turn into Tabula, most likely a Bramblejack, but just want to make sure people know item level matters. So now I got a comb sign, and more importantly, you can see that the base of the item is changing, right? So it's not just leather belt to leather belt, it's not just in the same base type. And because item level matters, there are actually a few like tricks that I'm not going to cover now, where you can actually force some items, because it works in a weird way. People were doing that with a Lycosade, which is a really cool thing you can do. Next up, now we're going to start delving into essences and fossils, and a little bit more in-depth on that, which is really, really cool. Let's see. So essences, they are basically alchemies. They're basically alchemies with a guaranteed stat. And some people feel like they're outdated. They're actually insanely strong for a lot of crafting. Some of them have special stats that you cannot otherwise get. They're insanely strong. And you do have special essences as well. So let's cover everything to do with essences. You start out finding these 4 are the only ones you can find in the start. And they're whispering and very, very low. I think they're like required level 0, actually. I can't remember, but I can't remember if they have a required level on them. But either way, you can see they're very, very low, right? So if I use a Whispering Essence of Contempt, let's just buy something from the vendor here to throw it on. If I use a Whispering Essence of Contempt, it's going to guarantee the 1 to 2 to 3 physical damage, and everything else will be random. Now, because this is such a low essence, something to keep in mind with them is that I can't hit, if I even use this on an item level 83 wand, I can't hit Tyrannical or Merciless like the really high fist rolls, because as you see at the top, restricted to level 35 and below in item level. So that means that you can't hit like really, really good stuff with this. So make sure you keep that in mind too. But the other things here are random. And then they keep going up. Now, some players will just like spam upgrade, whether you have an Essence tab or not. You can also just vendor them to upgrade them if you don't want to spend money on an Essence tab. You can just vendor them in sets of 3, and you'll get a higher level one. But some players will just upgrade all your essences to the highest tier. Now, this is insanely bad and you should never do so. It's something I'm always going to be preaching, and you need to know exactly why and when you should be using, for example, a Deafening Essence. Because they're very, very expensive, and even though I'm a very advanced player, I very rarely end up using them. And it's always when I know exactly why I want to use them. So the reason for that is something I've seen people do as a really, really good example is using Deafening Essence of Anger to run amulets. Now let's look at the difference, right? So what does it do in an amulet? Well, all their jewelry, 31 to 34 increased fire damage. Then we look Deafening to Shrieking. What's the jump? Well, you can see here, 27 to 30. So it's only 3, it's like 3% less, right? The tier. Like, the max tier is 30, the max tier is 34. So it's 4% difference. That's not really worth 3 more attempts. And again here, 23 to 26. So then I gotta think, is the difference of 8 enough for me to get 9 attempts? I don't think it is. So most of the time, the most potent crafting resource you have would then be Screaming Essence. Because for so many things, that is more than you need. So I would recommend for most people to use Screaming Essences. Some good exceptions to this would be like if you have handed in, let's say, the Divination card that gives you a 6th link, right? Dapper Prodigy. So maybe you have like this, you have a 6th link, then getting a Shrieking or Deafening Essence of Greed could be really good if all you care about is the life, because that's what Essence of Greed does. If you look here, you can see Body Armor, Essence of Greed. So it guarantees 126 life. And something else that's really good, early on, I can't use like a Whispering Essence of Greed on this because it says the target is not normal rarity. But once they are Shrieking and above, they work more like Chaos Orbs. So Screaming, they will have to be white. But on Shrieking and Deafening, they'll be like a Chaos Orb. So I can use this now on our... Sadly, it was really good, but we are going to override it for an example here. But now you can see that it guaranteed the life, and the others were random. So we got the guaranteed 126 life, and everything else was random. Didn't get any Shaper mods. And there are loads of really good essences. And they all do like different things depending on what they are used on. We'll talk a little bit about the special things. Oh, and they can also be used to force things that can't normally be on there. So an example of this is Shrieking Essence of Sorrow. You can see that it has 43 to 50 dexterity. Like a leather belt can't normally roll dex. 99% sure. It can roll strength, which is fine, but it also can't roll int, right? You can't get int or dex naturally on a belt, but with these, I can actually force that, which is very, very strong. Sometimes you might have a character that has like a huge requirement for that, and that can be very, very strong.
For freedom.
So now I have int on it. All the other stuff was bad, but still. And do remember, I've had like some players think that both fossils and essences just like guarantee good items. They don't. So they're the same like on everything else than the one they guarantees. It's the same chance as an alchemy, basically. Let's see. And yes, the guaranteed stat also bypasses. It also bypasses the item level requirement. So yeah, it can be useful. Talk really quickly about the advanced essences as well. The way you get these is first you would need a Remnant of Corruption. These are found normally just from fighting essences. Like you'll see, it'll say like Corrupted Remnant of Corruption, and you fight it, and then it'll drop the Remnant of Corruption. Then when you find either a Scorn, Envy, Misery, or Dread, you can use the Remnant of Corruption on that monster, and it will either upgrade the essences into one of these, it will either change the essences completely, or it'll like release it and it'll instantly start fighting you. And then you have like all of these 4 essences, which have like loads of really cool special stats that are good for crafting. Loathing as well is, while a more common essence, also very, very special for crafting because you can force reduced mana reserved on a helmet, for example. And there's so many great things you can do here with crafting. And I don't usually answer questions during this, but no, if you put a high tier essence on a low level item, nothing changes item level in Path of Exile. Nothing changes Path of Exile item level. Alright, let's see. Then we are going to move on to fossils, which will also bring us into Craft of Exile, a very, very powerful tool. So fossils have gotten changed throughout the years. They used to have, similar to essences, a lot of their own special mods that you couldn't get otherwise. They removed those from fossils and moved them to influence items like these. to make influence items more special as well. But fossils are still insanely strong. Insanely strong. And what they do, let's see, we can show on both PoE DB and we're going to show some on Craft of Exile. But let's say we're still looking at, I believe this is a body armor. But if I now click on a pristine fossil, which is the life one, and I click on that here, you can see that loads of mods disappear. And that is one of the best things about fossils. And if I hover over pristine fossil here, more life modifiers, no defense modifiers. It blocks out a whole set of mods. So that's really, really strong. There's loads of combinations you can do with this. This is where Craft of Exile really comes in handy. And we're going to teach you that. But you can do like, with fossils, you can make up to 4. It's like crafting your own crafting currency. So I'll show you in game real quick. But you have resonators that have like 1, 2, 3, or 4 slots. The 4 ones are fairly rare. They only drop them behind walls in the delve. But you can buy these as well. But yeah, so like I'll show you real quick so we have an example. Let's see. Also, we'll in this example show blocking as well. So here we can see the other thing here, reflect, is physical. And then we have one that is no physical, which is this one. Now, when we're using both pristine and metallic, you can see that there is only max life as a prefix left. And then we can throw prismatic on there. So you see like there are numbers changing here. So with the pristine fossil, that's adding it increases the chance by 10. Gives you a 10 times bigger chance that I'm going to hit life mod. It doesn't guarantee that I'm going to get a good life mod, but it's 10 times more likely than normal that I'm going to hit a life mod. Now, this also increases the chance for life regen and stuff like that. And again, this is PoE DB. We'll be linking to that in the description as well. And then I've done metallic, which blocks out the reflect, right? That is one of the big strengths of fossils, is the blocking feature. Now, we'll be showing more about that in Craft of Exile, because like thinking about and figuring out how to block things is a bit of a pain. And we can see the prismatic here is increasing the fire, cold, and lightning res by a power of 6, and the metallic is increasing the lightning by a power of 10. So you can see that the metallic has like a very, very big chance, and so does the life. So we're going to show that real quick. So we'll do a rare one. There's different sets of resonators. These are basically alchemy ones, so the item needs to be white. These are chaos ones, so the item can be already rolled. Now, this does re-roll the item too. It bypasses any meta mods that we haven't crafted or talked about yet. That's coming up next. But there's no like smart shenanigans you can do. It'll re-roll your item. All right, let's see. Pristine, and then the last one I wanted was metallic. So here you see more lightning, more elemental, more life, no physical, no defense, and no physical ailment or chaos ailment. So, as promised, this only hit one prefix. The only thing it could hit was life. It cannot hit hybrid because the pristine does actually cancel that out, because the hybrid rolls, they are life and like armor and evasion or stuff like that, right? So they are actually defense mods, which is a bad thing. But there it is. There it is. And like I said, we didn't get a good item, but both the life roll and a lightning and a fire rest is there. Let's see. Now, so this is only item level 84, but back to influence items. One very, very sought after thing in Path of Exile is something that you get on item level 85 Crusader chest, right? Item level 85 Crusader chest, and that's because it has something called, I'll show you. We'll actually show you on Craft of Exile, the explosion mod. So, Craft of Exile, really, really good website, and it might seem very, very complicated, but I'm going to walk you through the basics of it right now. So let's say that's what we want, right? I'm following a build guide and I'm new to the game, but it does say that an explosion chest is really good for Zizaran's Chieftain Blade Blast. Well, it's a body armor. I'm new, but I'm on Trade League, so I managed to buy a item level 85, let's say, int armor, right? What's all of this shit, right? Very, very complicated, but I scroll down here and I see that there's Crusader. Cool, that's the mod Zizaran said I want. And it's very expensive. I want to try rolling for it myself. I don't want to just outright buy it. So I click on it. Then it'll prompt you to, this influence is not active on the item. Oops. Make the mods accessible. So then it adds that influence to the item. Then I click on enemies you kill explode. Now, you can add multiple mods. Like maybe I really want life as well. But obviously, the more you put in, the more outrageous the numbers are going to look for what you want. And I have 2 examples for this now that are coming up. So this is what I want. Enemies you kill explode. One sec, I'm just going to say. Ooh. Just to show Path of Exile, and it's pretty good to play around with, and especially fossils. So I now have that as the only thing I've toggled. I'm going to click on fossils, and now it lets me choose. Do you just want to see like the absolute pure best, including 4 resonators? Maybe you're poor and you can only afford 3, 2, or 1. Or maybe you're solo self-found and you do have like 7 or 8 3 resonators, but you have no prime like 4 resonators. No primes. And you don't even need to like click anything here. You can just have Path of Exile compute the best selection for you. Elevator music. And here you can see that with 4, it's actually a 1 in 10 to get this. It shows you like the raw efficiency. Like this is just in 10 tries. If you have these fossils, this gives you a 1 in 10 to get this. And the cost efficiency here on Jagged, it'll like get you like a nice approximation based on the market. And 670 Jaggeds. And even Jagged and Pristines are pretty good. And here you have a chance of getting the explosion and the life mod. So it's pretty good. Pretty good. There's another really good example here. Let's see. There. So we just refreshed Path of Exile, made a fresh one. And it should be here. We're clicking on one-handed and on convoking wand. Now, let's see. If we'll show the difference here, but something that's very popular in the game for like end game builds and advanced builds is getting a wand that has +1 spell skill gems and +1 minion skill gems. Now, if we wanted to roll that with like, let's say chaos spam, right? It would be expensive, right? It's realistically never going to happen because both of the mods are so rare. It's never really going to happen. But let's go back to fossils. Can fossils make it easier for us? 2,516 combinations. Actually, that's a good point. This is actually in most guides talking to you about like having this. You can set item level. Where do you actually set item level here? There. Because it's a lower chance and low item level. Actually, the lowest item level convoking one you can get is like 70? I think it's like 70, but you get a lower chance at low level. I'm pretty sure it's 68 or 70, 71, 72. You definitely can't get an item level 60 convoking one. But let's look at this now. Let's say it's 70. And you'll notice now that fossils do have a lot of power with the blocking mechanic, which is really good. Do 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 do. But yeah, it's a very, very good combination of crafting. There, so you can see here that it's a 1 in 12, which is a lot better than 1 in 430,000 chaos. Um, so you have it's still very, very expensive. I've personally done this, but it lets you do something that is almost unrealistic to do, and it's doable, right? This would be, it would easily probably be something people would actually mirror. And mirror is a currency item that basically just copies an item. You are never going to use one as a new player. It is always something you will end up selling for 70 to 100 exalts, but it dupes an item. But that was a quick intro to Path of Exile. It's like kind of good to just play around with and experiment yourself, but those were like some good options. Let's see. And fossils can be like very, very much used like for simple things as well. Like you could use a shuddering and pristine on boots to try to just get life movement speed boots, or just spamming pristines. And maybe when there's one mod you want on an item and you know that it's a physical mod, after looking it up on PoE DB, you can just spam, you know, maybe you need +1 fizz gems on an influenced amulet, then it could be okay to spam jagged fossils. But it's worth like looking up a little bit on PoE DB and Path of Exile before crafting. And a lot of guides will like specifically tell you how to do that as well. Let's see. We have finally arrived at the crafting bench. So the crafting bench lets you add a modifier onto an item that has like empty spots. So if you have a full item, it has 6 affixes, then you can like add anything with the crafting bench. You can also modify sockets and links, and something a lot of people don't know, but you can actually modify corrupted items a little bit as well. So let's take this like random armor I have lying around here. Okay, I don't know why that's happening. Okay. Right, so we are going to vol this, right? Oh, I got 4% reduced fire damage taken. Ah, but I forgot to 4-socket it first, right? That happens sometimes. Let's see. So you can see now that it just adds vol orbs to the cost. So I can still like 4-socket it, 5 like there are actually quite a lot of people that will if there's very, very cheap unique chests, they'll like vol a bunch of them and then 6-link them afterwards if vol orbs are cheap that link. But we can like 4-socket it and then we could 4-link it as well. Very cheaply. You can also recolor it. Oops. You can also recolor it afterwards, and it just adds vol orbs. That's pretty much the only thing you can do to corrupted items. But this increases the value for you of corrupted 6-links at the start of a league because they're very, very cheap. A lot of people completely ignore even searching for them. I bet you a lot of people watching right now, maybe you are searching for 5-links and 6-links at a league start to try to buy cheaply, but you might have corrupted no toggled on. Let's see. But that's like a nice little trick there. But yeah, so for most people, you'll be crafting 1 modifier per items, and then this doesn't like change anything else. They also show in a brighter color, which I'll show in a second. And you can't have, you still like have to obey like the crafting rules. Like if we look here, right, this item has life on it, so I can't craft another pure life roll. I would have to craft hybrid, which we covered earlier at the start of the session. And you can see like the color of the crafted mod here is 5% chance to block spell damage. And you can, let's see, let's use this as an example. You can recraft it. So you see now it has 41 life. That's the lower roll. You can just click replace. You don't need to click remove before you craft a new life roll. It doesn't give you anything extra. So you can just click replace until you get a good roll, for example. And yes, you can recolor 16 corrupted body armors. And it's not some, every 16 corrupted body armor. The only thing you can't change anything to is mirrored items. And to see how many prefixes or suffixes an item have, every item has 3 prefixes, 3 suffixes. And if you hold on Alt, you can see here, this one has 3 suffixes and 2 open prefixes. And yes, you can, like, the item stays on your cursor, so you don't actually need to, like, hover over it again. The item shows when you're holding over replace too. This is live. Let's see. Let's see. So, I want to show you guys real quick how to discover different recipes, because you can see that I have a large amount here in my crafting bench. There are still some that are undiscovered for me. When it says here, that means that they are found by playing the game normally. And these are from another mechanic. Well, it's still playing the game, but it's another mechanic called Betrayal, which we're not covering right now. But you basically start fighting betrayal monsters or bosses in Act 9, and they will drop items. Some of them will be specific from the bosses, but some will be like this. So this is unveiling any belt or quiver, and I have a chance to get these. These are only from unveiling weapons from Torah. And there are some that are item level gated. Like, for example, you need to do at least tier 5 maps to get the very, very most used trigger wand. But we're not covering Betrayal super much right now. I'll show you one quick example of what a recipe looks like in Path of Exile. Wait. I don't know where it is in Karuri Shores. This is a special endgame you get after killing one of the bosses. It must still be here, right? It's normally in, like, the Oriath epilogue. Oh, here. It's over here. So they look like this. And you just click them. They're, like, visible on your map as well. But, yeah, normally you would kill Katava and end up in a different epilogue. Let's go back to the crafting bench. And there are, like, a lot of the socket ones, or all of the socket ones, are in Delve. So you do have to interact with the Delve mechanic. We are covering, I believe it's on Wednesday. I don't know. I think today is Tuesday. But, or is today Monday? But on Wednesday, we're covering how old leagues work. Including things like Delve. And we'll be doing mapping that day as well. But yeah, that's how you do the recipes and stuff. I wanted to make sure you guys know about that. And then there is something called meta crafting recipes, and they're found through Prophecy and the Pale Court. So that things like Unbreathing Queen 5 and those, like, different 4 chains. We'll talk a little bit about meta crafting as well. It's a very, very advanced form of crafting. And there are some exceptions to crafting and rules that trying to cover the most realistic ones for new players and not flood their brains too much. The metacrafting ones, they are all very expensive. There are 4. There are prefixes cannot be changed, suffixes cannot be changed, and then there's cannot roll attack mods and caster mods. Sometimes when you're following guides, like for example, Toxic Rain guides will very often teach you how to roll a +3 socketed gem levels very, very cheaply and very easily compared to what it would be to actually crafting it with chaos or something. These are items that you can actually guarantee using these special mods. And the last meta mod that you do get from doing the Pale Council is the multi-mod. This has been nerfed throughout the years. It used to just be can craft multiple modifiers. So the way it works now is that it is, let's see, I'll show you real quick. I'll do there. There, amazing amulet. So lucky, first try. The way this works now is that this actually counts as one of the 3 crafted modifiers. So now it lets me craft the 2 other mods that I really wanted on this, which was life and physical damage attack least as life. It might seem very, very expensive, especially when you're a new player and it's not something you really want to throw away. But sometimes in Path of Exile, there will be items where you really, really only need 1 or 2 modifiers on an item, and then you could multi-mod 2 others and have a very powerful item. And as a quick example of meta mods, sometimes in Path of Exile, and I don't want to go too in depth on these, it's just a quick example of things you can do. Sometimes in Path of Exile, you'll maybe have wasted. Let's say I have mana and a low life roll on this, right? But maybe I have 2 suffixes that are exactly what I wanted. I was rolling on a rare influenced item and I got 2 of something that's exactly what I wanted. You can actually use these meta mods to wipe prefixes, which I'll show really quickly now. Let's see. Let me just like remove the crafted mods. Suffixes cannot be changed. And when doing this, it is important that it has 1 mod left over, or it will actually turn blue. Annulments does not turn the item blue. So you can see here that it's left with both of the suffixes. If I'd done it the other way around, it would actually have turned back to blue. But with an annulment here, you can see that it doesn't. And yeah. Yes, you can multi-mod. Prefixes cannot be changed and suffixes cannot be changed. Sometimes crafters will do this in standard to have a cool name on their item when using thousands of exalts. Let's see. Oops. Wrong one. Let's see. Was there anything else that I really wanted to cover that's important? I think that's pretty much it. Do take a lot of notice. I'll give one really, really big crafting tip. This is one of my favorite things to do and very, very important for new players and stuff. At a league start, it'll be a combination of... Okay, I actually need to create a new character for this. Soul Self on Highest Hardcore. But this is a very, very big tip that I'm very happy to show. And I think it'll help a lot of players. This is one of my favorite crafting tips.
Nothing like a brisk dip to start the day.
It uses essences and the crafting bench and a little bit of knowledge.
Is it possible
So we'll show you that now.
Someone who's already dead?
So obviously item level is really important, and we talked about how the essences can be used. So what I'm about to do is how to have an okay chance to make a pretty good endgame item for some builds, especially essence drain builds, vortex builds, and it can be used on a lot of things. I do this all the time in Soul Self-Fun. I basically continuously do it throughout the league because this is the best items you can make for cheap for a lot of casters. So you specifically want item level 2 on this, and I'll show you why in a second. But basically, item level can sometimes be used to manipulate and having less bad mods that you can hit. So that's like the last thing we're gonna cover before the Q&A. I'll cover actually the other vendor recipes too before we end. That sounds useful. So since I want an item level 2, this character is item level, or sorry, level 2, and that means I'll be buying item level 3. Now, first, it's worth checking through the vendors and seeing if it's selling a +1 gems, lightning, etc. But it isn't. So what I'm going to do is actually de-level the character so that I can buy an item level 2. That means that there's 1 less roll I can get. And for that, I just sell a Scour and a Wisdom. It's okay at item level 3 as well. It's just 1 less mod. But here we can see we're buying item level 2. Now, I might have found already like pretty good leveling ones. Maybe I'm playing Essence Drain and I've already found like a +1 Chaos Wand, but I haven't really gotten an endgame one. Sometimes throughout the game, depending on league, you might find Deafening Essences, you might find Shriekings, and you'll have a bunch of Screamings. And a really, really cool thing you can do to get a mid-endgame wand here is actually to use it on a Driftwood wand. Another streamer, Carvarusko, discovered that later on, you do actually get a imbued wand from a vendor in Act 9, and you can actually de-level your character all the way down to level 1 here just to get an item level 2 imbued wand. If you're really hardcore. I'm not going to do that. But let's show some examples and talk about the cool things you can make here. So here we see that the other stats are shit and it only got the 83 spell damage. That's not what you want, right? And then it ends up being a waste. But I find that with essences, it's way, way more cost efficient to do it on an item level 2. Because here we hit not full jackpot, but this is now a really, really good wand. If especially this didn't have the 2 to 3 fire damage to spells, this would be a giga jackpot. So this is good in a lot of ways. And we're going to bring an annulment in case we can hit it here. But this is now +1 cold spell skill gems and 73 spell damage. This is, for a lot of people, entirely usable. A lot of people would now be, for example, crafting Trigger is very, very popular for a lot of builds. It basically will cast the gems that are in your wand when you do an action. Very popular for Vortex builds. Or you could even craft Resists. However, if we annul the 2 to 3 fire damage to spells, what we can do now is to do cold damage over time multiplier. And we have a really, really solid endgame wand. That seemed scripted. That was nice. That was beautiful. So that is a really, really good example that is actually fairly doable for new players. And it makes your essences way more cost efficient. Because if you're using Screaming, Shrieking, or you shouldn't be using Deafening, obviously. But if you're using these essences on like a high item level, the chance that you're getting other good mods, especially +1 gems, is very low. And +1 gems is very, very good to scale gems like this. No, it's not scripted, it's just lucky. But this is now a very, very good item. And we can do another callback to the metacrafting mods. Sadly, I don't have more Exalted Orbs on this to actually show. But what I could do now is I could do prefixes cannot be changed and wipe away the mana regen and the life gain on hit. This would leave me with a wand that only has the spell damage and +1 cold spells. I could then multi-mod, and we're getting pretty expensive now, but it is actually worth it, especially in Soul Self-On. I would then have a wand with the trigger craft, the cold damage over time multiplier, the spell damage, and the +1 cold spell skills. It is no longer worth exalting past that. I can't add influence because it's so low item level. But even with those 4 stats, it is super worth it. It's a very, very good Soul Self-On. This is something you can do Awakener 8 with very, very easily. So the annulment orb again just removes 1 at random. So there we broke the item. We removed the +1 cold. It removes one of the stats like we explained earlier. Some of the other recipes we want to show before we end. Very, very useful throughout the leveling process. There's a couple of different recipes here. Let's see.
Hello.
So, first, important to remember that you can change an iron ring into one of the others. So we'll start with a wand recipe. Very, very used quite a lot here. We'll do 3. So let's try. We're going to do 3 different sapphire rings.
While we live, we are blessed.
Show a blue, and this is rare. Oh, I actually had an alchemy there. We're going to show a blue, rare there. And here,
Yes?
we have made the wand blue. And we need 1 alteration. And now let's look at the differences on the wand recipe. So on a white ring, it's item level 8, 6 to 10, like that tier of cold. So it goes up to 7 to 12 cold. With a blue ring, it's item like required level 14 and 9 to 16 to cold spells. And obviously you can do this with fire and lightning using ruby or topaz rings. And then this one, which is what a lot of people do, so you do it around right after Val or right before, and then you get 13 to 24 damage to spells. Very, very good recipe.
God hasn't
Very worth
abandoned
doing.
us.
And then the attack damage recipe, which works on, weapons or bows. Well, it works on wands too, but no one's leveling with fist wands. We're gonna have a rustic sash,
While we live,
and
we
this
are
time we
blessed.
need it to be either blue or alked, and we need the whetstones. Oops. And the recipe
Yes.
here needs either a blue, a rare, a weapon of any quality, and a whetstone. And you can see that the rare one is making it between the 50 to 64 bracket, and the blue one is making it 40 to 49. So these are really, really good for leveling. So you don't have to just throw an alchemy on an item and hope that you get a really good fizz roll, because sometimes you always get a really good fizz roll. Apparently, bad script. I don't even have scour. There we go. Sometimes you're like, man, I can't use this at all. Get out of here.
Yes.
Well, it's a good thing I kept this as a backup. Here, give me some fizz. Now, you're not going to have regals while leveling, and I think you first get the flat fizz in the Act 3, I believe. But if you find a regal early, that can be really good too, because once you have both the fizz roll and the flat fizz, that's really nice. That concludes our main things that I wanted to cover